To build a website, you will need these skills and tools: Figma to create a good design, HTML, CSS to implement that design, and JavaScript to add functionality. Some people spend months learning these tools before building their first website. But on this channel, we focus on making things quick and easy. And the easiest way to learn new skills is to get in the state of flow. It means finding a balance between your skills and the task at hand. If you have a task that is too easy, you will get bored. And if it's too hard, you will get frustrated or burned out. You need to keep the task just hard enough to keep you focused. That's why video games increase in difficulty as you progress through the game. And life is a game as well. So always try to reduce the difficulty level when learning a new skill. The easiest way to reduce the difficulty is the classic 80-20 rule. Do 20% of the work to get 80% of the result. So, in reality, you only need to learn 20% of these tools to build websites. Now, how would you know what to learn and what to skip? Just learn the bare minimum to achieve the task in hand. Plus, we have Google, YouTube, and other tools that will do most of the work. First, just do things to get results. That will initiate a positive feedback loop to keep you motivated for the next steps. So, if you want to design something, don't buy a course or spend months in tutorial hell. Watch a few videos and then design. Once the design is ready, watch a few videos on HTML and CSS and start building. Of course, you will get stuck and forget things. Go back and watch some more videos, then come back and proceed with your task. Sometimes a normal Google search is also enough. Professionals Google stuff all the time. Once you learn how to learn, you can learn anything you want. Let me show you. Open Figma on your browser or install the desktop app. Go to Community and find some inspirations. But this could get confusing as there are a lot of designs to choose from. A better way is to look at your competition. After all, good design solves a problem, and looking at your competition will give you some content and design ideas. Once you have some content in mind, we can start the design process. Web design focuses on two things. Number 1, content. Number 2, interaction. Your design should do both these things effectively. Let's start simple. Just try to replicate this design. The classic tried and tested 2 columns layout. Works for most businesses and easy to build. Use the type tool to write a heading. But we need to decide 2 things, which font and size to use here. The answer is simple. Just ask Google. And after a few minutes, you will know the answer. You see how you just learned something new that is easy and actually solves your current problem. Now let's put a small paragraph. We already know which font and size to use here, but how much spacing between the heading and the paragraph? Again, look it up. With practice, these things will become very easy. But if you try to learn everything at once, you will either burn out or forget everything in a few days. In the beginning, just copy everything. Once you get good at replicating designs, you will be able to create your own designs. Let's adjust the spacing here. Now we need a call to action button, or maybe 2 buttons depending on your situation. Just write the action name, then press Shift and A to create an auto layout. It's a handy feature in Figma to make flexible layouts. More on that later. Look for an image or illustration to go with our heading. This is important and will take some time. You don't need a course to judge an image. Just use your gut feeling to decide, and if you are not happy, you can always use a different image. For now, just keep moving forward. Solve one small problem at a time. Now, as you will try to build next sections, the problems will get bigger. But there are amazing features in Figma to solve those problems. Create a type scale and save them as variables. Do the same thing with the colors. Every time we write or use color in Figma, we use these variables, so later we can change the design with one click. Let's turn that button into a component. So if we need another button in the design, we can just drag and drop that button on the page. Let's say the final design has 6 buttons, and we want to change the button style. Just modify the original component, and every single button will change in real time. We can turn anything into a component, then drop that into the page to complete our design. Let's create a card like YouTube. This may look difficult to replicate. but designs are just small elements arranged into rows and columns. You just have to break it open. Design smaller elements first. Once you are happy with the design, turn that into a component. Now we can use it how many times we want, and change the design whenever we want. So, you don't need to learn everything in Figma, you just need two things. The 20% that will be used 80% of the time. Speaking of 80%, let's move on to the actual building part, because that is where the designs come to life. Now, similar to designing, we will solve one small problem at a time. So, just learn enough HTML and CSS to start building. Once you build a few basic websites, you can start learning JavaScript to add some functionality. Let's start simple. We will learn HTML and CSS by implementing this design. We used Figma to design our website. In the same way, we will use VS Code to build our website. So, first install it on your computer. Once installed and running, create a folder where we will save our files and images. Now we need to create an HTML file to write our code. Just write an exclamation point and hit enter. Don't worry about all this code. For now, just focus on the task at hand. In the body tag, write H1 and press enter. Write the heading and save your file. To render our code on the browser, we are going to install a plugin. Click Go Live, and you should see a website open up in the browser. Congratulations, you just created a new website. H1 just means heading 1. H2 means heading 2, and so on. To write a normal sentence or paragraph, just use P. You don't need to understand or remember anything now. Pro developers Google syntax all the time. The important thing is to just build something and gain some confidence. We will get to the head tag as well, but for now, let's add a button and image to complete our hero section. To create a button, we write button, and then whatever the action is. But what we have here is a link that is styled as a button. To add a link to the page, we use the anchor tag, write A, and hit enter. We have two fields here, the reference and the action name. For that, we will use CSS. But first, let's add the image as well. To add the image, write img and hit enter. We have two values, the source of the image and the alternative text for that image. Place the image in the folder and reference it here. Now that we have all the elements in place, it's time to style our page. First, create a CSS file to write our code. Then we need to link the CSS file in our HTML, so the browser can access the CSS as well. That is the purpose of the head tag. It contains instructions for the browser that doesn't appear on the website. Now, let's find and import our font into the CSS file. Again, don't try to understand the code, just copy and paste. First thing we need is the fonts and color style. So, let's bring our Figma variables into CSS. Just assign a name to the colors and copy-paste all the color codes. Same thing for the headings and paragraphs, but we need 4 values here. Font weight, font size, line height, and the font family. You could have written this in 4 lines as well. Property on left and value on right. CSS is very straightforward. You select the element you want to target, then inside the curly brackets do your magic. Whatever you write here will be applied to the element on the page. So, if we want to change the background color to black, we need to select the whole website by selecting the body tag. Then just assign black color to the background property. But instead of writing color manually, we just use the variable we created earlier. In the same way, let's assign the text color as well. To assign the font properties, we just write font and the value we created earlier. Now let's turn this link into a button. Once again, let's select the anchor tag and apply some values to it. Background to assign a background color, color for text, and padding to give some breathing room. Now we have our first button ready, but we want a different style for the secondary button. How do we select that if both have the same HTML tag? Very easy. Just assign a class name to that button. Think of it as assigning a label to an element. You can label a lot of things with the same class name and target them at once. More on that later. For now, we need to style this button. We target a class by writing period followed by the class name. Then just assign some values. We don't need background color. And a solid border. Again, we used a shorthand for assigning the border values. But something is still missing here. Yeah, the border radius. So, let's assign that as well. We just have to assign the values to the top element, and the rules will cascade to all the elements with the same tag or class name. That's why it's called cascading style sheets. To overwrite this, we could redeclare the values or add a class to add specificity. But we are getting too technical here, and this is not the right way to learn something new. So, let's get back to the task at hand. Our heading, paragraph, and the buttons are ready. We need to fix this image though. The golden rule is to set a width of 100% to all your images, so they occupy all the space available and don't go out of screen. Now our elements are ready, but we need to position them. First, we need to divide these elements into two groups. To group elements, we use a div tag. Every single website is built of divs. Imagine them as boxes that contain HTML elements together. Now, to manage these boxes, we use an amazing and powerful tool called Flexbox. Flexbox turns these boxes into a dynamic and fluid container. So, these boxes change their size and position on different screens. I told you earlier that every single website is built by divs. Well, they all use Flexbox to manage those divs. So div and Flexbox are a key part of building websites. We apply Flexbox to the parent element in the HTML tree. A parent element contains another elements within it. It is positioned higher in the hierarchy, just as a family tree. Now, what is the parent element for our divs? It's the body tag. So, select the body in the CSS and write display flex, and we are almost there. For 1:1 ratio, we write flex1, then gap to create some space between the boxes, and align items to align the items. But our design is covering the whole width of the screen, and that looks a bit cluttered. Let's set a max width to the website, and set the margin to auto to keep things in the center. Now, let's see how this responds to different screen sizes. Well, we don't want that. So, let's set a minimum width to the boxes, and tell the boxes to wrap into the next row on smaller screens. Alright, we have designed and implemented a hero section, and although it's nothing fancy, it's a start. We looked at variables, auto layout, and design system in Figma. HTML elements, divs, classes, CSS variables, properties, and Flexbox in VS Code. Some people spent 6 months to get to this point, and some never made it so far. But when you break a big problem into manageable chunks, learning becomes easier. After solving enough design problems through HTML and CSS, you will be faced to solve functionality problems. For that, you will learn JavaScript. After solving enough design and functionality problems, you will be ready to solve real-world problems. And clients or companies hire you to solve their business problems, and not to design or write code. So don't focus on learning tools. Instead, focus on solving a specific problem by using those tools. Forget Figma or VS Code if you made a WordPress website that actually helps a real business. You are already ahead of someone who has watched hours of tutorials, but never built a single app or website. So, to wrap things up, the easiest way to learn a new skill is to solve a problem by using that skill. If you want to learn video editing, just edit a video. Watch a couple of tutorials, then proceed with the video. You will get stuck, for sure, but you will find a solution and move forward. Before starting this channel, I never made a single video in my life. I learned WordPress in 2013 because my friend needed a website. I learned design because my job required me to. I learned coding to improve my design portfolio that was built on WordPress. And every time I learned a new skill, I used this exact method of learning. Learning by doing. The easiest and fastest way to learn anything.